Chapter 20, Hedgehog. Humans don't take their own lives because they want to die. Every day they wake up in this nightmare. Every single day I wake up to see the lives of those whom I killed. I see them every waking moment and in my sleep. I can't escape from them. We take our lives because all we want is for the pain to stop. Is that so much to ask? Is that really so terrible? 4 weeks later, Sam and Jennifer lost hope for Ted. He never answered the door. He stopped answering phone calls and text messages. The mail in his apartment never left the mailbox, just sat there as if no one ever bothered to take any of it out. Even Erin didn't see him at work anymore. When she inquired, Ted simply left. He was no longer part of that brokerage. His porch grew dust, floating and clouding every time a small gust of wind would blow into the house. He was gone. She assumed he packed everything up and he just left. Samantha knew Jennifer had high hopes for him. He seemed to have come a long way that night, July the 4th, but was it too far? Was he pushed to the brink where the only option for him was total isolation? Did he live in that house anymore? Sam couldn't be sure. But every single Saturday and Sunday morning she would knock on his door. There was never an answer. Did we treat him like a project and not a man? Is that where we made a mistake? She still didn't understand what she saw that night. Ted showed veins glowing in the dark in numerous colours. She couldn't even tell how many shades of green she thought she saw on his body and his clothes, and not to mention that he made an inhuman stride. She, Erin and Jennifer all saw the veins, and agreed amongst themselves that they should never mention what they experienced to anyone else, for fear of being labelled as insane. It was a whole month ago. Perhaps she was just imagining things, but that was the first time he showed his pain openly to them. It was not something to take for granted. Ted, we tried. We'd failed. I'm sorry. She placed her hand on his door one last time. I just hope you're alive. If you can't find help from us, find help from somewhere, please. This was the last Sunday she would choose to knock on this door. Perhaps constant badgering him with text and phone calls did seem rather stalkerish. She should have known. If a man at her office started doing it, she would feel the same way, isolated. A man as alone as he intended to be. Perhaps their attempts at friendship finally drove him off, leading him to leave everything behind. Should we have brought him there? Perhaps the fireworks was the worst thing we could have done. Forcing a military vet to fireworks should set them off. I'm sorry. She removed her hand from the door that Saturday, never to knock on that door again. Tuesday came around. It was the last Tasty Tuesday, and Sam's load was picked up early and without delay. She was enjoying her commission checks, but made sure to put plenty of it aside. She walked up to the church and grabbed a cup of coffee in the fellowship hall nice and early. Granted, the coffee from the coffee machine with the pitiful excuse of coffee capsules was disgusting. Still, it was better than nothing. There were volunteers coming in and out from the side kitchen, bringing in plates of cheese and crackers. Some were even gluten-free. She leaned against the pillar, watching as people came by, talking with one another, often with a full mouth or in between bites. She sighed as she bowed her head down, drowned in her own thoughts of isolation. She felt an arm wrap around her shoulders. What's got you in a slump? Michael frowned. She came to and looked to him. It's Ted. I don't think Jennifer or Erin's heard from him either. He took a bite of some sliced cheddar. I suppose it's time to let go. I know. I just don't even know anymore. From what little he let us in on, I just know he isn't going to get help. Michael, I don't even know if he's alive. She started tearing up a little, bringing her hand to her mouth. Can a man really live with all of that darkness? You and Jennifer knew him better than I did. All I could really talk to him about was work. I did my best, but his walls were up around me also, he answered. But I think that we've done all that we can do. I don't think there's anything more we could have done. But there must have been something more, something else, she explained. All it takes is one more good act. All it takes is to know someone is there. You said it yourself. We as Christians need to do better. But how can we, if we can't even do this? He let out a sigh. You're right. We can't. We can't do anything. Only God can, and perhaps this is exactly what needed to happen. He let out another deep sigh as he swallowed a cracker. Have you ever heard of the hedgehog dilemma? No. These little creatures that shoot quills outside of their hide as a defence mechanism. Whenever they're cold, they try to huddle with each other for warmth, but fail to do so because whenever they get too close, They hurt each other with their quills, making it painful and dangerous. Effectively, they don't want to get close for fear of hurting themselves or others. So none of us know what happened to him because he won't tell us. He seems withdrawn to us because he's afraid of being hurt. He feels the closer someone is to his heart, the harder it is going to hurt. That makes sense. I think I understand now. He hides behind his mask, the smiles, the laughter, because he doesn't want us to know how he actually feels, because he'll be giving a part of himself over to us or other people. It's easier for him to live in a life of solitude than it is for him to trust others. I think someone or many, probably many people stepped on his toes and betrayed his trust numerous times, where he has no faith in any person. He doesn't trust anyone. But Michael, he needs someone to help him carry the load. He needs help. He won't accept it. It is a cruel reality. I can't help but wonder exactly what he went through in the military. Maybe, just maybe, inviting him to the fireworks was a bad idea. Maybe, she admitted. But we would never know unless we try. You truly are trying to be a new kind of hero, aren't you? Michael smiled. Park Street Church emptied into the street on a dark and dreary night. Fog rolled in, filling the air with an aura of decaying mud and sadness. Sam felt its oppressive weight fill her lungs. She let Michael lead her up Park Street towards Terry Nation. The group followed behind them, following behind the heavily concentrated fog. Sam could find in herself, beyond the miscellaneous chatter of everyone around her, she found it difficult to breathe in the fog. Her heart weighed heavily with every passing step. She was missing something. But what was it? What was the one thing she could do, one thing she could have done differently? Or was this opportunity gone? And was Ted lost forever? She remembered the veteran she bought some food for a few months ago, sitting careless on the sidewalk, unable to function in civilian life, led to one of destitution. No one to care for them, no one to love them or take them off the street. Would Ted end up like him? I'm so sorry. She knew she had to let it go, but something kept telling her to try just one more time. She took a deep breath as her thoughts filled her heart again. If I must knock on that door all day Saturday, Ted, I will. So help me God, I will until you answer the door or my knuckles bleed. Samantha held Michael's hand, being led through the threshold of Terry Nation. As they walked, Samantha paid special attention to the faces around her, the smiling faces. Not one face held the grimace of despair. These genuine smiles told her there wasn't a care in the world if there was one less person, especially if they didn't know that person. So cruel, she reflected within herself as she frowned. In a world filled with smiles, hiding the fact that the world around her was filled with smiling devils and kind hearts damned to be broken. Anyone with a kind heart was damned to die here, and the cruel smiling little devils would bury them all. They turned the corner into the back of the bar. Sam found her eyes scanning the bar, looking for Ted in the faintest hope he might be there, and be like the hedgehog in the anecdote Michael shared with her, that he might make an attempt to connect with them. Not that she knew if he felt he had a reason to. All of this assuming he was still alive and somehow didn't kill himself. She thought of Jennifer and her relationship with Ted, how it seemed oddly romantic, yet even one-sided. Jennifer would take it the hardest if she didn't accept it already. Ted was gone. But something else caught her attention, a half-drunk glass of red wine with the beverage nap resting on it. There was no one sitting right in front of it. Sam let Michael walk her to the bar. Jennifer and Tim were not far behind, still talking between themselves. Even Jennifer still seemed depressed and mildly angry. Her face frowned and her eyes angled emptily at the bar top. Honestly, she knew Jennifer drew the conclusion that Ted may have offed himself, but Sam was unsure. As Jennifer walked behind them, she swayed side to side, looking downward at her feet. She wasn't mad at Ted. How could she when she didn't know the whole story? She wanted, out of her own morbid curiosity, to know the whole story, tucked away in a steel trap. But she now knew that she would never get an answer, and would never see Ted again. However, whatever the story was, whoever or whatever did it to him, was so horrible it led him to his perpetually hollow existence. Scott took their order and brought their drinks over. A glass of wine, a cider, and 2 mystery drinks, one for Jennifer and Michael. They stood in silence as they looked into their drinks, waiting for the bar and ruckus to start. Sam didn't pay attention in the least about what was in the mystery drinks. She twirled her cup dispassionately, staring down at the endless ripples inside her cup. Well now, let us not let the drear and gloom get our spirits down, shall we? Jennifer forced a cheerful smile. Our life is frail and fleeting. Let us not remain in the bitter pit of despair, and then let us remember what we were able to do for those not us while we are here." She raised her glass, her hand trembling with tears streaming down her face. "To my dear sweet Tedward, may you find some hope in this fragile world." To Ted. Tim raised his glass. Tim looked compassionately to Jennifer closely, before bringing the bottle to his lips. Samantha hovered her lips over her glass as she studied Tim, shifting uncomfortably in his stool. Of course, why wouldn't he be uncomfortable? Jennifer forced a eulogy in the middle of a bar. To Ted. Michael raised his glass. He frowned as his glass was raised. Samantha felt it surreal to be raising a glass to someone they didn't know if they were going to see again. She felt like she was saying goodbye as she raised her glass in the air. To Ted. "Goodbye, Ted. Until next time, if there is a next time." They all took a sip of their dismal toast inside a bar which was filled with many happy faces without a care in the world. Sam leaned into Jennifer. She knew that out of all of them, Jennifer would take it the hardest. Ted seemed to have Jennifer under some spell, intentional or not, she couldn't tell. She wrapped her arm around her shoulder and swayed with her back and forth as they drank. They offered little words, they only drank, in the middle of this period of mourning for their friend's departure, however long ago it was. Sam looked through the bar again, seeing friendly faces, those not aware of the pain around them. They don't care. They don't care about anything or anyone. Those smiles, those faces, were mere simple contracts of agreement of respect, giving the impression they truly cared. And everyone was always in violation of said contract. Only through this, and only through Ted, did she understand this sudden truth. Even if Ted was no longer here, she would find him teaching them all something about the frailty of the human mind, and of mortality. Who could actually be trusted? "Scott, I'll take another," came a loud voice from across the other end of the bar. It seemed familiar somehow. Sam looked in the direction from which it came. She excused herself, walking in the direction of the crowd. She passed through the clumps of people. She followed Scott as he brought another glass of red wine to the other end of the bar. She followed him until he made his delivery at the end. She made it to the end of the bar. "Ted, you're here!" she exclaimed as the man took the cup of wine and looked down at her. "You again. What the fuck do you want? Get out of my face. No one wants you here," he said. "I'm sorry. I thought you were someone else," she said, bowing her head as she turned around. Cullen, yes, that was his name. She remembered. "My mistake." "Yeah, keep better control of your friends, bitch. I don't want to talk to you again," Cullen snapped at her. Cullen, the name didn't exactly roll off the tongue. She frowned at him before turning around, letting the man enjoy, or attempt to enjoy, a lonely glass of wine. She realized something. That man carried himself much like Ted, and while he was ostensibly happy, the rude demeanour and those blank eyes told her a different story. Did he also go through a life fraught with misery or despair? Could he perhaps relate to Ted where she could not? It was wrong for her to judge. Taking another step away, perhaps, like Ted, he was a veteran with a harsh demeanour, and he pushed people away because he was aware of the negative stigma people would have on him. Maybe that's why he pushed them away and told them some poorly constructed limerick about killing her and Michael, or that's what she thought it was about. Finally, out of earshot of Cullen, she came across a less crowded part of the bar. Her eyes found a man leaning against a large wooden wall which attached itself to the seat he sat on. His face was behind a menu, and he had a smile, all too familiar, and in front of him a plate with some mashed potatoes, with only a singular bite out of it. There was a glass of water resting on the wooden polished round table. "Ted?" she asked. "Hmm?" He looked up to her and smiled. He hadn't decided to be relieved or disappointed yet. Emotionally, he was exhausted. "I came here for one thing and one thing only, and it wasn't the potatoes." He did want a friend, but with everything he's done, he would only bring pain to them. Or he would somehow end up with another knife protruding out of his back. "Oh, it's you. How have you been?" "That is a painful question, and not one that I need to answer right now. Where have you been? We thought you were dead. Your mail, it's still sitting there," she exclaimed, taking a seat next to him. She pointed a finger at him to emphasize the rage she had in her facial grimace. "Are you okay?" "I'm about as okay as I'll ever be," he answered. "I'll not get any better. I'll only get worse." "How much worse can you get?" she said. "Look, I'm still not sure what I said, and I'm not going to make you tell me. I'm not. If you want to talk, I'll listen, but damn it, Ted, you need help." "I know I need help," he continued with that accursed fake smile. "You know," she was angrily sarcastic. "If you know, why don't you get help? I don't trust therapists, and there is no one living I can trust. Sure, some people experience emotional pain. He let his smile fade, growing weary of the mask he was forced to wear. Some deal with grief or depression, some deal with loss, and others deal with lack of trust, others feel guilty. But it is rare that they must put up with more than 2 or 3 of those at a time, and not near to the extent that I feel. He frowned, and finally she saw tears watering his eyes. My heart is always heavy. It's broken, and it's nothing more than a ball to be played with, filled with scars and bullet holes. This heart is broken, and the body hasn't caught up yet. Besides, I'd hate to be an inconvenience. The only way for someone to understand you is for you to talk about it. You don't let anyone try to understand. You keep pushing us away by your little disappearing act. Her tone became soft. Look, Erin isn't here. Michael, Tim, Jennifer and I just did a little eulogy because we thought you were dead, or at the very least none of us will see you again. I've told you before. His voice dropped down to the whisper, his eyes angled to her eyes. I'm a murderer. I see the faces of the dead around me when I'm awake. The faces come back full throttle in my dreams. I hate sleeping because of this. I have nightmares every single night, and I wake up in the same condition you saw me in that night. What you saw is me every single night. Every single night. There is not a day that goes by. I don't take vacations because of it. I don't rest because of it. My only hope is to work myself to death until I can no longer see these things. It's hard to imagine that you're still alive if your life is as tragic as all that, she said. I choose to believe you think yourself a murderer, but I don't. He showed his wrists. There were no scars. There should be scars here from me cutting. They're gone. I've tried drowning, driving a car and locking myself in while driving into the ocean. I failed that. I tried hanging myself, and all I did was hang there until I passed through the damn noose. Why don't you ask for help? Ted, you need it. You don't understand. I'm not human. He gritted his teeth. I don't deserve help. Besides, in the end, who would want to help a monster like me? Then what are you, Ted? That I believe. God, just what did you put him through? What I told you the other day, and you thought I was exaggerating, was the truth. Yeah, sure, I believe in God, a God of forgiveness and mercy, but so does the devil. I have killed too many people for him to even consider forgiving. Ted, no! He jabbed her in the chest with his finger. He grabbed his wallet and dropped a C-note on the table. No, Sam. You know something? They told me the first kill was the only one that mattered, and it broke me, and they lied. They all fucking lied. His knuckles struck the table. The first one wasn't the only one that mattered. Every single one mattered. I remember every single face. Every face! And I was never given a choice. Not one. Sam, I know the monsters and demons aren't hiding in the closets or underneath our beds. I'd be lucky if they were that far away. No, they're running amok in our heads, and they are restless. He stood up and started walking away. Ted! Sam called, trying to grab his hand. He snatched his hand away, raising his voice. No, Sam, I'm not worth saving. Warm tears streamed down his face. The ruckus of the bar ceased, and everyone turned. Jennifer put her drink on the bar and stood up, keeping her hands to her side. I would like to believe, he choked on his tears, that a person like me would be welcome into heaven because that's where I believe them to be. But I can't. I have too much blood on my hands. I'm not welcome there, and why should I be? I have only a handful of good memories and what I wouldn't give to have that again, but the nightmares never stop. It haunts me when I'm awake. It haunts me when I'm asleep. Finally, though she suspected as much, he admitted to the reason those bags exist. She took measured breaths, hoping to make them subtle enough. Just listen, Sam, just listen. That's all he needs. Just let it out. He continued, I came into this world with nothing. I still have nothing. Everyone I have ever loved is dead. Everyone I ever trusted is either dead, dying, or betrayed me. And those that betrayed me, I murdered. And I would do it all over again. I came into this world with nothing, and what little I had accumulated was ripped from me. I will die with nothing. I'm not even going to get a tombstone. None of them ever got a tombstone. They served their country better and with more honour than anyone flashing that damn flag has ever and ever will, and they were all thrown away for something they didn't do. If I could go back in time, I would, and I would get into those hospitals and strangle each of us so we wouldn't have to live and face the cruelty of this world. It would have been better had the 32 of us never been born. Is he referring to his friends? Thrown away for something they didn't do? Treason? Sam felt like there was a rock in her chest. The truth finally came out. There, are you happy now? There's my heart. It's out in the open. Now why don't you do with it what you want and dissect it like the science project you think I am? I'm done. Turning away, gunfire and screams filled Ted's ears. He could feel the hot gun in his hands, ready to fire. The faces assaulted his mind again, the bleeding and desecrated faces. He couldn't hear the swift footsteps of a weeping woman sprinting behind him. He felt pressure on his chest as the woman wrapped her arms around him and held him as tight as she could. Ted gasped, and he came to, realizing he was crying all this time inside the back bar of Terry Nation. There was no sound except the deafening sobbing of this woman in front of him. He reluctantly scanned the room, sobbing still. All eyes were on him. Many people who have seen him in passing, many whom he didn't know, nor did he care to know. He looked down, and it was Jennifer who was holding him. How are we to know the pain you were in? The guilt, the shame, the hateful regret, despair, and utter isolation. Any one of them can be as heavy as a mountain, and you bear all of them. Your spirit is crushing underneath all of that weight. Jennifer sobbed. Why do you do this to yourself? Why? You can't keep living like this. You just can't. One mountain is enough to kill a man, crush his spirit, and you bear all of it. There's no need, none, to go it alone. She buried her face into his chest, feeling the warm tears down his shirt. He felt her embrace, her arms wrapped firmly around him, unwilling to let him go. She continued, You need to stop not wanting to burden yourself to others. I know you feel like we won't understand because we don't know what you're going through. I know you feel like we would sooner stab you than help you. You can't keep living like this, Ted. Not when you have friends to help. You may not see it, and you may not accept us as your friends, but here we are, trying to help you. His body was still and firm like a petrified dead fish. We want to help. You can't go through life like this alone. Let us help you. He gazed passively at the bar top. Filled with another traumatic memory, he found himself trapped inside. His eyes watered again. He saw something absolutely terrifying. I know you don't trust us, but we trust you to make the right decision, said Jennifer. Her hands clutched the back of his shirt. The last person who put trust in me died, he sobbed. She looked up to him with sobbing, swollen eyes, and she smiled through the pain. Then let us be a light that your darkness so desperately needs. Let us fill that empty hole. I will help you bear this burden, Ted. We all will. I will be your light, and I mean it. She rubbed her tears on his chest again. I will help carry that pain. You don't need to do it alone anymore. You say you've lost everyone you cared about, but we're here. And you may not care about us, but that feeling isn't mutual. She sobbed into his chest. She held onto it tightly. He tried to move his arms up to push her off him, but then the most peculiar thing happened. Even his will was not enough to move his arms, no matter how hard he tried. They just wouldn't move, as if his very being refused to let go of this woman who provided something to him. She continued, Even in the handful of times we've gotten the chance to hang out with you, your absence will not go unnoticed. You say you no longer have a family. Let us be that. I know you're in pain and hate yourself for living, but damn it all, Ted, life is too short to be bitter about the past. Give yourself a fighting chance to enjoy what little life you have left. Give yourself a fighting chance, if not for your sake, then for mine. She released him, only to wrap her arms around his neck. This is what you forgot. The world is filled with so much uncertainty. The world is filled with darkness, and is contaminated by the poisonous rot of humanity, and at times we may think that life is not worth living. But what is certain is that, while the darkness of the world may be like murky waters and impossible to see through, behind the veil of darkness is light. But the darkness has a way of snuffing out the light. I don't want to do that to you, he stammered. If that is what it takes, I will gladly take that risk. No, at the cost of my own light, she repeated. Why does she talk like her? Damn it, why is she so much like her? I don't want this. Why can't I just die in peace? Why must I be flooded into ancient memories of the past that must be buried, and buried properly? Jennifer, if I let you in, I can never let go. Do I even want to let it go? Slithers, you were always there. Slithers' face crossed his mind. He could see her smiling at him, with the sun radiating behind her, and that beautiful meadow with the ducklings crossing in the lake. So cruel, forcing me to look into the past as real today as it was, but it is only a mask. It's not real, but does it really matter? Seeing Slithers in Jennifer, he was emotionally overwhelmed, weeping as the strength of his arms returned to him and embraced Jennifer. He wept into her shoulders, berating her with all his pain, all his trauma, all his grief, all his depression, and all his isolation. Lord knew he had those in no short supply. Sam's tears streamed down her face as she approached him from the side and hugged them both. Her head was buried on Jennifer's shoulder. No one could hear the steps of Michael and Tim, who made it to the other side. Tim hugged Ted from behind as Michael placed his hand on his back. Tim was much more affectionate than Michael. Ted saw the bar begin to empty. The citizens of the bar left, one by one, leaving the huddled mass of people just there, moving around like water on rocks. Some glanced at the crying mass but gave it no more thought than that of curiosity, not sharing a shred of care in the world for the broken man, the man who wanted nothing more than to die but could never follow through with it, or else risk killing what remained of his squad's memory, his only true friends and family. He saw one man walking right by him, and unlike the rest of the bar, he took notice of him, sternly peering into his eyes, daggers stabbing into him. He was a tall man and, like himself, seemed all alone in this world. Ted didn't recognize him. Jennifer rubbed her face against his chest again. "Ted, will you come with us on Tuesday?" Yes, he replied. I'll come. You don't need to find me. I'll be there. You don't need to call or text. I will be there."